Welcome back, everybody. As far as getting the motor off, there's only two bolts. This one and this one goes all the way through. Show you on the new one. Depending on which way you have the motor, it either attaches here or attaches here. So we already took those two bolts out. You gotta be careful. Everything has to stay tight together, otherwise the brushes in here will slip off the armature, and then you have to try and get all four brushes to stay in place and get the armature back down in. And then you got this sleeve that just goes on the motor and goes through the center hole. Then on the tank here, you have four bolts holding the tank on. And you take them out. We'll see what's in there. I'm thinking there's an O-ring right here. Here's the new one. Because of this lip right here where it would accept an O-ring. So you got to be able to keep the fluid in the tank. So I'm believing there's an O-ring in here. So we're going to, unfortunately, they didn't send us a new O-ring. So we have to take the one off this old block and put it on there and be very careful not to cut it. The tank is stuck on, so we don't have a choice but to put something in there to try and break the seal without hurting the O-ring. It's almost like they might have used some kind of glue. Okay, now we got the tank off. It was just stuck on there. Now you gotta get the bolts out to hold the pump to the housing to be able to bolt onto the new house. After you get the tank off, pay close attention to the direction of the screen, because that is something that is critical when you go to put the tank back on. You want this facing down. As you can see, there's four bolts, and if you look at the new pump, we're not quite sure until we get the pump off, but the new pump only has two holes, so only two of those screws are actually holding the pump to it. But you still want to pay close attention to the direction of that screen so it's facing down in the tank. Otherwise, you might have a little problem with picking up fluid. But we wound up putting this whole block in a vise to get the tank off because it was stuck on there so bad. But we're going to take this pump off and transfer it. I'm thinking there might be an O-ring down in there. I'm not sure until we actually get the pump off, but I'm thinking there's probably an O-ring down in there, just like the O-ring right there that has to be transferred, because they didn't send us any new O-rings. They should have. When you're disassembling something like this, you never know if you're going to hurt the O-ring. You keep working around till you get it to come out. And there's the O-ring. Now you got to transfer the O-rings from the big O-ring onto that, because luckily the small O-ring stayed on the pump, so you don't have to mess with that. Okay, we got the pump in. As you can see, it's nice and tight. And what we did, we set it in there, and then we alternated. We ran them down pretty much like finger tight, and then like about a half a turn each one to easily and evenly pull the pump down into the housing to make sure we did not damage the O-ring. And then once it was actually down in there, we tightened these Allen bolts down to where they were originally, and we used this small torque wrench to do that. When you're putting the tank back on, you want to take the cap off so you don't have any pressure holding you from pushing it down. But once you get it down most of the way by hand, then you can put the bolts in there and snug them down with your fingers, and then just turn about a half a turn on each one to make sure it pulls all the way down, so you're not pinching the O-ring on any of the sides. Got the pump all back together. Now we're having to get the bolts to bolt it back up. and then we're going to fill it up. And one of the things we're going to do, instead of trying to use that 5-gallon bucket and pour directly into the tank, we're going to use this, put hydraulic oil into this, and then use the funnel to put it in the tank, because it's a whole lot easier to deal with something like that. Well, we got it all back together, and it's actually going down. That's all. It's still going down. We're checking to make sure the lines are not getting pinched or anything.
Or pulled on. Okay, so plenty of slack.
Now we'll go rest the way down.
It's all the way down.
And now we're going up. So we're working both directions. Hooray! And we're making sure that nothing's getting kinked in here or too tight. Everything's looking good. Wire tied to cables so they stay in place and out of the way. And that's all the way up. I appreciate you coming back. Go ahead and hit that subscribe and like button.